Hi there, and welcome to this episode of Beyond the Photo with me, Damien Jackson. In this video, I'm back at Killarney National Park. In fact, I'm not too far from the upper lake where I took my last video. I'm going to visit Tower Woods Waterfall in the hope of getting some nice compositions, and hopefully, although it's a bit overcast at the moment, there might be a little bit of light come out. There's a nice bit of autumn colour around, and I hope to capture that as well. So thank you for joining me along the journey, and let's get going. I'm presuming Tower Woods, and if you're local please correct me, got its name from the old gamekeeper's tower that's built at the side of the N71 about 8 kilometres from Killarney on the road to Kenmare. It was used to keep watch for poachers when the park was a private estate back in the day. Now the waterfall itself is actually named Crossmaglan Cascade, which name comes from the nearby Crossmaglan mountain. The easiest way to direct you to the start point for the walk to the waterfall is that your first landmark is about 8 kilometres from Killarney on the N71 towards Kenmare. It's an area known as Eagle's Nest, which has what I'll call a formal tarmacked car park on the right, and that's immediately followed by a low-lying bridge with the lake on either side. Once you get there, keep an eye out for the tower pictured earlier, which is about 1 kilometre from here. Now it's covered in greenery, but there's a little lay-by on the left very close to it. It's not a formal car park, just one of those many little lay-bys, probably large enough for 2 cars at the most. Now unfortunately the tower comes after the lay-by, but you can always turn around and come back. If you reach the bridge with the old church at Dunconaghy, you know you've gone past it, though you can easily turn at the church car park. From the lay-by, there's an easily recognisable track which brings you into the undergrowth, and eventually you'll reach the river after about 300 or 350 metres. At the river, turn left or against the flow of the river and follow the little path that winds its way up the river bank. Now it is quite wet in autumn/winter, and you'll need some wellies, as there are a couple of shallow streams running into the river that needs to be crossed along the way. After about 500 metres along that path, you'll see the waterfall appear in front of you. So as you can see, I've arrived at the falls. The colour on the ferns around here is fabulous. They're lovely golden browns and yellows and all of that. But I want to start up on the cliff where the waterfall is dropping from. It is possible just to climb up there to get around to the left of the waterfall as I'm looking at it. And what I want to do then is shoot out over where it drops and onto the woods in the background. I'm hoping that there'll be some nice colour in the trees in the woods. Now the light is still a bit flat, but look, you'll never know. I mean, you can always bring it up a little bit in post-production. So I'm going to start up on top, and we'll come back down here in a few minutes. So for my first composition, I just want to get to the top of the falls with the water cascading over down into the pool below. But also I want to get the mountains in the background and the colour on the trees. Now, as I've said already, the light is a bit flat, and it's a pity because the trees are really brown and yellow, but hopefully there might be a little bit of light. I was here earlier this morning, didn't bother with the video camera because it was so wet. It was drizzling and hazy and misty, etc. So at least it's dry now, and hopefully I'll get a few shots. So what I want to do is I want to get a nice flow on the water, but yet I don't want to lose the detail. I don't want it to be like a white piece of cotton wool. So I'm going to use about 1/5 or 1/6 of a second, and in order to do that without any filters, I'm at f16, because as I said, it is quite dark. So I'll shoot away here for a while and see how I go. What's happening to me now is that there is a bit of light coming into the sky, and that's completely blown out because everything down here is in the shade. So I'm going to have to put on a graduated filter just to hold back the sky a little bit. Now it's not ideal because there's not a straight edge there, but hopefully in post we should be able to do something with it. But if it's blown out, you'll never be able to do anything, so we'll give it a go anyway. I spent the whole morning shooting, wiping, shooting, wiping, shooting, wiping. I thought I might get away with it for the afternoon, but I think there's a few bits starting to come back again. Now I'm running into difficulty here because the soft edge graduated filter, you can see that the mountains are very uneven. And when I put on the filter, it holds back the sky all right, but then the mountains themselves become black, the tops of the mountains. So the only solution to this is to bracket it. I'll take some shots for the ground itself, the waterfall and the pools down below, which are in total shadow, and then I'll just expose for the sky in a second shot and blend both of them together in post-production, because it's the only way that I can get in that kind of dynamic range that's here at the moment. Okay, so that's better. So I've used 1/5 of a second and 1/50th of a second. And the difference in that, I should be able to blend them together later. Again, if you're new to blending, just remember, don't move the camera in between the shots. Leave the camera on the tripod and just change the shutter speed. Leave all the settings as they are, just change the shutter speed, expose one for the shadows and then another one then for the highlights in the sky. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to try a panorama. Just to the right of the waterfall, as you're looking at it, there's a whole host of woods, and there's some beautiful yellow and rustic brown colours there, but I can't get them all in the one shot. So I'm going to start here with that little green tree on the left of the frame and swing across then to the right to try and take in some of the woodlands. Now I'm going to put the camera into vertical because sometimes when you shoot panorama in horizontal mode, it just gets too much like a letterbox. It's very long and it's very narrow on top. And I just find you get a better result if you run with the vertical. So we'll go with that. Okay, so that's about 6 images that I can put together into a panorama later on. Now sometimes when you've got objects moving, for example the water within the panoramas, Lightroom can find it more difficult to stitch and you can see little lines within it. But sure, look, it's worth having a go.
I'm happy enough with this one, and Lightroom seems to have done quite a good job on stitching it together. And I'm always amazed at the power of a raw file. I mean, this is quite a damp day and there's 6 images stitched together there. It's quite overcast, but the colours are there within the trees and the raw file allows you to pull them out. And it just shows the importance, I think, of the editing process and really practicing your editing to bring out the colours and detail within the image itself.
So for my second composition, I'm going to turn around and straight behind the camera, there's another, I suppose it's more of a cascade than it is a waterfall.
but the grass behind it and there's a little tree beside it have turned a real yellowy brown, and there's some grass growing on the rocks as it goes up that have turned yellow as well. So I might get another shot there, so we'll try that now. So second composition, the Cascades, the yellow in the background, and I'm trying to stay high enough, even though the sky is quite flat. I'm trying to stay high enough because there's a lovely little yellow tree in the top of the frame. I'm using a 10 to 20, which on a crop lens is what, 15 to 30. And what I'm trying to do is use the tree here on the left, in the top left of the frame, and then as the cascades come out, they're going to run out through the bottom right of the frame.
Well, I had the idea in my head of what I wanted out of this image, but it just didn't work out. Hard to pin it down really, but there's something not working within this image. Perhaps it's just the subject is not good enough. Sometimes when you're in a location and you're looking at something, it looks great, but then when you take a photograph of it, it just doesn't work out. On the other hand, and probably far more likely, it's the photographer who needs to get his act together.
So I hope you can hear me here. It's quite noisy here at the bottom of the falls. My third composition is I'm just going to segregate the left-hand side of the falls. You can see this tree here growing out of the rocks, and then you have the golden and yellow ferns, and they're going to be right in the middle of the photograph. And just underneath me then I have a cascades that's running down through the rocks onto the river, etc. Now the one problem I do see here, that if I want to keep the 1/5 of a second to keep that nice look on the water, those ferns are blown around a lot, and 1/5 of a second won't keep those sharp. So again, I might have to take two different exposures, one for the water, get a nice look at it at a 50th of a second, and then I might have to up my ISO and take maybe those ferns at 100 of a second. They're not moving as much as the header was in my last video at the upper lake, but they're still moving enough that I'd probably need 100 or 125, 125th of a second in order to get them. Okay, so that's a 1/5 of a second, and that gave me a good exposure for the water and the rocks here. And now I'll just bring it right up to maybe, I'll up my ISO to 400, and I'll up my shutter speed then to, well, if I go as far as an 80th, I'm going to have to bring the ISO even further. So my ISO at this stage is at 1000. So 1000 ISO to get me an 80th of a second. So hopefully that will freeze those ferns there. And at 1000 ISO, it's only the ferns I want, so you're not going to see noise in the image or anything. It'll be fine. I'll take that shot. Okay, so that's that done. Time to move on and see if we can find something else.
So here it is, a blend of two exposures, one at 1/5 of a second to get a nice flow on the water, and the second at 1/80th of a second to freeze those ferns in the middle. Now it's not a bad shot, no banger, but look, happy enough for it considering the day that was in.
I was walking up and down the bank here trying to find another composition, and I just spotted this little green holly tree out in the middle of the river, just at the bottom of the falls there. The problem with it is, of course, as you can see, you know, it's very difficult to isolate it. It's surrounded by this big tree here and the branch that's going right out. So I don't think I'll be able to take it away from the branch itself. I'm going to use a slightly longer lens, a 24 to 70, so I can really make it tight around the tree itself. Now, for whatever reason, where the tree is, there doesn't appear to be any wind whatsoever.
So what I'm trying to do is to provide the isolation that I was speaking about. Is if I could smooth the water behind it, and if the tree didn't move in the wind, that would stay sharp, and it might isolate it that way. Now I'm still going to have the problem with the tree here, but then I have these rocks here in the foreground which should look well, and a cascade of water coming down. But I'm really not sure about this tree here. I think it's going to ruin the shot. But I'll take a few from different angles and I'll show them to you then.
This is the best of a few shots I took while attempting to isolate the tree. In the end, I ended up having to clone out a branch from the tree that was in the upper right hand side of the frame. It just wasn't possible to shoot it without it in it. It was just too close to the holly tree. I still like the little holly tree surviving in the midst of all the water. From a technical point of view, the leaves on the outer left show signs of movement, so it wasn't as calm as I thought it was on the day.
So that's it from me at Tower Woods. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please leave a like or a comment below. It helps YouTube spread around the video, and it'll help me develop the channel. If you liked what you saw, please think about subscribing, and if you want, click the bell and you'll be notified of my next video. So until next time, stay safe and bye for now.